Hey, I'm Markia. Want to hear something scary?
The Noonwraith. The seasons are changing yet again as fall turns to winter. The weather can be as much an enemy as a friend, and sometimes it can take up arms against us, like in this next story, inspired by a submission from Ola. My name is Ola. I'm from a small town in Poland where what we lacked in modern conveniences, we made up for in natural beauty. Mountains, woods, and endless farmlands. We had it all. But when the temperatures rose, we weren't allowed to go outside to enjoy our surroundings because of an ancient local myth. Centuries ago, at noon on a sweltering hot day, a blacksmith was repairing a horseshoe in a nearby wheat field when a spark flew and caused a fire. The landowner was away, so his wife tried to save the field, but was sadly burned alive. Since then, if you ever ventured outside at noon on the hottest days, it was said you might feel the spirit of the Noonwraith. It was a weak, dizzy feeling, kind of like a heat stroke. One early autumn day during a terrible heat wave, my friend Sophie and I were watching TV in the living room with my younger brother. As my dad headed out to grab lunch, he said, "It's burning up out there. Do not leave the house." Our house had no air conditioning, so my brother decided to cool off in the shower. Before he went upstairs, he whispered to me, "Don't leave, Ola. Seriously, it's scorching out there." It's almost like he knew what would happen next. "Let's get some fresh air," Sophie said, opening the back door. Sophie loved to test the rules. I don't know why I agreed. I guess I wanted Sophie to think I was cool. "Fine," I said, "but only for 10 minutes. My dad will be back soon." We started through my family's garden and crawled under an opening in the fence to a giant golden wheat field next door. It was untended and the stalks rose above our heads. "What are we doing here?" I asked, noticing a rusted old scythe lying in the field. It looked particularly grisly. My question was answered as Sophie pulled out a cigarette. She struck a match to light it, making sure your brother doesn't freak out. "Want one?" I shook my head. I didn't like smoking. I didn't like the feeling of being in this field either, but I followed Sophie. We heard a rustling from somewhere in the field, accompanied by the sound of a woman humming. We froze, peering through the wheat stalks. The hum grew closer as a hot, dry wind blew through the wheat field. The scythe flipped up through the air and landed in the hands of a beautiful woman in a white robe who glided out of the stalks. Seeing her, I could tell she was composed of wind instead of skin, and her face, eyes, and bodily form came from a whirlwind-like energy that shaped her and gave her strength. At first, I was in disbelief, and then I became dizzy. Suddenly, it dawned on me. She was the Noonwraith, I uttered. The Noonwraith turned to Sophie, whose face had paled. She looked scared and woozy, just like me. "You have trespassed here. Put out your embers and leave." "This isn't real. It's the heat," Sophie replied, but I could tell she was clearly dizzy. The Noonwraith glared. "Would you continue to smoke that ember if you knew it would lead to your death?" Sophie sneered, clearly taking the Noonwraith for a heat mirage. She took a big puff of her cigarette when, strangely, the fire went out. She coughed, clutching her neck, her eyes tearing up. I looked over, and the skin on Sophie's face, neck, and arms had turned this dark red. Steam rose off her skin. Sophie cried out as her whole body shook violently, and she fell to the ground. Then the Noonwraith eyed me. "You too have trespassed." "My friend told me to," I replied. The Noonwraith's eyes narrowed. "And since you couldn't think for yourself, you too will be punished." I watched, dazed and powerless, as her scythe rose up. "Ola! Ola!" My brother screamed my name as the scythe swung at me. My brother grabbed my arm and the two of us sprinted for our lives. I could feel the Noonwraith's hot breath at the back of our necks. She wasn't giving up. My brother and I scrambled to the hole in our fence and dove underneath. The wind died down, and I caught my breath. I finally understood what the Noonwraith was, the spirit of that dead woman, still trying to protect her field from fire.